You've never set foot in a prison cell in your life, until today. The man in the cell next to yours killed 3 people. The man across the hall is waiting for an appeal he'll never win. And the guard standing at the end of the hall, the one with the expensive watch and the blank stare, has already looked at you twice. Not the way a guard looks at a new inmate, the way a man looks at something he hasn't quite figured out yet. You're a detective. You've been doing this for 12 years. Locking people up in places like this is your job, but no one here knows that. No one can know, because the moment they figure it out, you're no longer a detective. For now, no one knows your true identity, but in a few hours, your identity will be revealed, and that's when it's time to put your skills to use. Enjoy the show. The intake form asks for your name. You write Ryan Mercer without hesitating. You've been practicing that name for 6 weeks. You've said it in the mirror, in the shower, in the dark at 3 a.m., when sleep stopped being something that happened to you. The pen doesn't shake. Your hand doesn't betray you. That's the first thing they teach you in undercover work. The body lies better than the mouth. The corrections officer processing you doesn't look up once. He's seen 1,000 Ryan Mercers. He'll see 1,000 more. You're not a person in this room. You're a case number, a bed assignment, a daily head count. The fluorescent light above him has been flickering for what looks like months. Nobody fixed it. That tells you something about this place before you've taken 10 steps inside. They take your clothes. They give you the uniform, gray, stiff, smelling of industrial detergent that doesn't quite cover what came before it. You change in a room with 8 other men and nobody speaks. That's the first rule of Alton Creek Correctional you learn without being told. Sound is information. Information is leverage. Nobody gives it away for free. The orientation walk takes 11 minutes. You count them. A guard named Tanner leads the group. You knew his name before you walked through the gate. You know his file. 14 years on the job, 2 misconduct reports that went nowhere, a house in the suburbs that costs 3 times what his salary should allow. He walks like a man who owns the floor under his feet, not the walk of someone doing a job, the walk of someone running an operation. He doesn't look at the new inmates the way a guard looks at inmates. He looks at them the way a butcher looks at inventory. You file that away. The cell block is called D-Wing. 3 tiers, 40 cells per tier, 1 toilet per cell. The smell hits you on the 2nd tier, bleach and something underneath the bleach that bleach was never going to fix. The man in the cell next to yours is already there when you arrive. Late 40s, neck tattoos, eyes that have been doing math on you since you appeared in his peripheral vision. His name, according to your briefing file, is Darnell Croix, former mid-level distributor for the Soto cartel, currently on year 4 of a 12-year sentence, currently one of the most well-informed men inside Alton Creek, currently the man you need to get close to without looking like you're trying to get close to him. You put your mattress down, you sit on it, you stare at the ceiling. The first night in a cover is always the same. The silence isn't silent. It's 40 different kinds of sound. Breathing, metal cooling, someone 2 cells down who can't stop coughing, the distant hydraulic groan of a security door cycling open and shut on a timer. You listen to all of it, and you build the map in your head, where the cameras are, where the blind spots fall, which guards rotate at which hours. Tanner's shift ends at midnight. The guard who replaces him, younger, softer, the kind of face that hasn't learned to hide what it's thinking, does his rounds every 40 minutes exactly. You time it on the first night. 40 minutes, 42, 39. Close enough to be habit, not close enough to be discipline. That gap is where things happen in a place like this. You already know 2 men have died in D-Wing in the past 8 months. Official cause of death on both, medical complications. One was 26 years old. The other was in the last month of his sentence. The second one is why you're here. A man 3 weeks from walking out the door doesn't die of medical complications unless medical complications have help. His name was Deshaun Pratt. His sister filed a complaint. The complaint went to the State Oversight Board. The State Oversight Board forwarded it to your unit. Your lieutenant looked at the file for 10 minutes and then looked at you. 2 weeks, he said. Get in. Get what we need. Get out. That was 12 days ago. You have 2 days left on the original timeline. You have nothing yet. Nothing that would hold up. Nothing clean enough to put in front of a prosecutor without it getting laughed out of the room. The tooth hurts. The micro recorder is the size of a grain of rice, embedded in a temporary crown on your upper left molar. The dentist your unit uses does this twice a year. He has very small hands and the patience of a man who has made peace with doing uncomfortable things. The device records everything within a 4-meter radius: voices, ambient sound, movement. The battery lasts 72 hours before it needs contact charging through a receiver disguised as a toothbrush. Every morning at 6:15, before the block wakes up, you brush your teeth for exactly 90 seconds. That's your only contact with the outside world. Sarah Voss is 3 miles away in a modified panel van registered to a plumbing company. She pulls the overnight audio, runs it through filters, flags anything usable. She sends you nothing back. That's protocol. The channel runs one way until you have something worth extracting for. By day 4, you understand the economy of Alton Creek better than most men who've been here for years. Everything moves through the infirmary. The prison doctor, a man named Fitch, who smells like he starts drinking before noon, signs whatever paperwork Tanner puts in front of him. Supplies designated for inmates are reportedly being redirected for profit. Commissary shipments come in light, and nobody files a discrepancy report because the man who would file the discrepancy report gets his commissary supplemented every week from a source that doesn't show up on any official ledger. You learn this not from conversations. You learn it from watching. The Yemekan, the cafeteria, is where the hierarchy makes itself visible. Who sits where, who stands, who eats first, and who waits. Darnell Croix sits at the same table every meal, third from the window, back to the wall. 2 men always flank him, not bodyguards exactly, more like punctuation. They mark where the sentence begins and ends. You eat alone for the first 4 days. That's intentional. A man who pushes for company too fast is a man with an agenda. You need to be boring first, invisible, the kind of person who was simply always there. On day 5, there's an incident in the lunch line. A younger inmate, can't be more than 20, in on a first offense by the look of the fear still fresh on him, drops his tray. The crash echoes off the walls. Hot food spreads across the floor. The kid goes to his knees to pick it up, and a guard you haven't cataloged yet applies pressure to his hand. Not an accident. Deliberate. Slow, to make an example of him. Nobody moves. Nobody speaks. You watch Tanner, who is standing at the far end of the cafeteria near the service window. He sees it. You can tell by the micro-adjustment in his posture, the almost imperceptible settling, like a man watching something he arranged. He doesn't intervene. He doesn't look away either. The kid picks up the tray with his good hand. His face is completely blank. He's already learned the first lesson of Alton Creek. Pain is private. Public pain is invitation. You look down at your food, but the tooth is recording. On day 6, something shifts. You're in the yard, concrete, chain link, a basketball hoop with no net, when Darnell Croix sits down on the bench 3 feet to your left. He doesn't look at you. He watches 2 men playing handball against the far wall. He says one sentence. You count things. It's not a question. You don't answer immediately. You wait 4 seconds, long enough to not be reactive, short enough to not be evasive. Habit, you say. He nods once, almost to himself, like you've confirmed something he already decided. Then he stands up and walks away. That night, lying on your bunk, staring at the hairline crack that runs diagonally across the ceiling of your cell, you run the interaction 12 times in your head. Either he's made you or he's recruiting you. In a place like Alton Creek, those 2 things can look identical at the start. What you know for certain, Darnell Croix has been inside long enough to see the infrastructure of this place clearly. He knows where the bodies are buried, possibly literally. What you also know, if he's made you, you don't leave this facility in a way that involves paperwork. Day 7, the infirmary. You request medical attention for a wrist injury. The wrist is fine. You wrap it yourself in a way that looks worse than it is. Fitch examines it with the enthusiasm of a man who resents being consulted and clears you in 90 seconds. But the 90 seconds is enough. The medication cabinet behind his desk has a lock that was last changed, based on the wear pattern on the keyhole, approximately never. The logbook on his desk is open to the current week. 3 names. Medication listed. Quantities that don't match standard dosing protocols. One of the names is Deshaun Pratt's. Pratt has been dead for 8 months. His name is still generating medication logs. Someone is billing a dead man's prescriptions and pocketing the difference. Someone who has access to the system. Someone who signs the forms. You memorize the page, every number, every date. You walk out of the infirmary with a bandaged wrist and enough to start building something real. 40 meters down the corridor, Tanner is standing at a junction point, arms crossed, watching you walk toward him. His face gives nothing away. Neither does yours. But your tooth is recording every step. Tanner doesn't stop you. He just watches you pass, close enough that you can smell the coffee on him, burnt, hours old. His eyes track you the way a security camera tracks movement. Not curious, automatic. You don't look back. That's the rule with men like Tanner. Looking back is acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is relationship. You don't have a relationship with Tanner yet. You have a problem with Tanner. Those are different things, and the difference matters more than it sounds. Day 8 starts the same way every day starts. The overhead lights in D-Wing flicker on at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes of gray half-light before the block fully wakes up. You use those 13 minutes the same way every morning. You brush your teeth, 90 seconds, upper left molar. The receiver pulls the previous 24 hours of audio and pushes it to Sarah's van in a compressed packet. You'll never hear her voice. She'll never hear yours. But 3 miles away, she's building the same case you're building, from the outside in, while you build it from the inside out. You spit. You rinse. You look at your face in the metal square that passes for a mirror in Alton Creek. Ryan Mercer looks back at you. You've been him long enough now that the transition takes no effort. Ryan Cole, the badge, the apartment, the case file spread across his kitchen table, feels like something you read about once, a character in someone else's story. That's when you know an undercover is going wrong, when the cover starts feeling more real than the person wearing it. The laundry facility sits 1 floor below the cell blocks. Fewest cameras in the building. A loading dock door that cycles open 3 times a week. On paper, it's a rehabilitation program. In practice, it's the only place in Alton Creek where the machines are loud enough to swallow a conversation whole. You get assigned to laundry detail on day 8. You didn't request it. The assignment sheet just changed overnight. Darnell Croix is already there when you arrive. He doesn't acknowledge you. You take a station at the far end of the sorting table and work in silence for 20 minutes. When the guard on duty steps out to take a call, Croix moves to the station next to yours. His hands keep moving through the laundry. Fitch is going to notice his log was read. Already noticed, you say. Tanner knows there's someone inside. Doesn't know who yet. You process that without breaking rhythm. How long has the log been running on dead men, you ask? 3 seconds of just machine noise. Since before Pratt. Pratt just got curious about it. There it is. Pratt didn't die of medical complications. Pratt died of knowing something. And Croix has been sitting on this information for 8 months, waiting for someone worth giving it to. The guard comes back. Croix drifts to his original station without a transition, smooth as water finding level. 45 seconds. Your tooth recorded every word. The problem arrives at 3 p.m. A guard tells you Warden Doyle wants to see you in the administrative block. The administrative block is a different world. Carpet instead of concrete. The smell of printer paper and recycled air. Framed commendations on the walls. Doyle's office sits at the end of a corridor lined with windows overlooking the yard. He can see everyone from up here. He chose this office for that reason. He gestures to the chair across from his desk without looking up. Ryan Mercer, he says, you requested infirmary access yesterday. Wrist, you say. You lift the bandaged hand. He looks at it the way Fitch looked at it. The way men look at things they don't believe but can't disprove. Fitch says you were looking at his desk. Hard not to. It's a small room. Silence. The kind designed to feel like pressure. You've sat across from better interrogators than Doyle. You keep your face clean. He leans back, folds his hands. Alton Creek runs well because everyone understands their role, he says. Inmates who understand their role have a comfortable stay. Inmates who don't understand their role sometimes face unexpected challenges. He said it out loud, in his own office, like a man who has said it before and watched it work every single time. Your tooth is 4 feet from his mouth, recording every syllable. You nod once. The nod of a man who has received a message and understood it. Clear, you say. He picks his papers back up. You're dismissed. You have the warden on record threatening a man he beat you. You have the warden on record threatening a man he believes is an inmate. You have Croix's testimony about Pratt. You have a medication log running on a dead man's name. It's not a conviction, but it's enough to open a grand jury, enough to pull Tanner's financials. enough to make the whole structure visible to people with the power to tear it down. What you don't have is time. The tooth needs charging in 14 hours. After that, the recorder goes dark, and everything that happens inside Alton Creek stays inside Alton Creek. You need one more thing before the battery dies, something that connects Tanner directly to Pratt's death. Croix's word puts the system on trial. Tanner's voice puts a man in a cell. You find Tanner at shift change, near the junction corridor where he always stations himself between 9 and 10 p.m. You approach him the way an inmate approaches a guard he wants something from. Slow, visible, non-threatening. You tell him you have information about a distribution line running through laundry detail. You tell him you want protection in exchange. He looks at you for a long time. Then he tells you to follow him. The maintenance corridor behind D-Wing has no cameras. You knew that from day one. Tanner knew you knew, which means he chose this location deliberately. That should worry you more than it does. But the tooth is recording and Sarah has your GPS ping, and if you're not out of this corridor in 20 minutes, she calls the extraction. Tanner talks. Not because he trusts you, because men like Tanner have been untouchable for so long, they've forgotten what caution feels like. He talks about the distribution line. He talks about Fitch. He talks about the loading dock schedule and who gets a cut and how the paperwork gets cleaned afterward. And then, without you asking, he talks about Pratt. Says Pratt was going to walk out and keep walking straight to a journalist he'd been writing letters to for 3 months. Says some problems solve themselves if you adjust the right medication at the right dosage and let Fitch sign the form in the morning. He says it like a man describing a maintenance issue he resolved efficiently. Your hands are completely still. Your face gives nothing. The tooth gives everything. Extraction happens at 6:15 a.m. on day 9. You brush your teeth one last time, final upload, then you sit on your bunk and wait. The lights haven't come on yet. The block is still in that 13-minute gray half-light, full of breathing and metal, and the distant hydraulic groan of a security door. At 6:22, 4 federal agents and a state prosecutor walk through the D-Wing entrance with paperwork that didn't exist yesterday. Tanner's in the yard when they find him. He sees the badges before they reach him, and for 1 second, just one, his face does something you've never seen it do before. It loses its certainty. Doyle is still in his office with the windows overlooking the yard. He watches it happen from up there, the way he watches everything. Except this time, the thing he's watching is the end of 15 years of careful, quiet, documented brutality walking toward him in the form of a federal warrant. You're already in the corridor when a hand closes on your arm. Darnell Croix. He's not being extracted. He's not part of this. He has 4 years left on a 12-year sentence, and this morning changes nothing about that math. He looks at you. Really looks. The way he looked at you in the yard on day 6 when he said you count things and waited to see what you'd do with it. He doesn't say anything, neither do you. He lets go of your arm and walks back toward the cell block. You watch him go. Then you walk out through a door that, for the first time in 9 days, opens because you asked it to. Outside, the morning is cold and gray and smells like nothing. Sarah is leaning against the van with 2 cups of coffee. She hands you one without a word. You stand there in the parking lot of Alton Creek Correctional and drink it. Tanner is in handcuffs somewhere behind you. Doyle's lawyer is already on the phone. Fitch will have a federal agent in his office before noon. The logbook with Deshaun Pratt's name on it, a dead man's name, generating prescriptions for 8 months, will be evidence by tonight. You put 47 men in prison before today. Now you've built the case that takes down the people who were supposed to be watching them. You finish the coffee. You hand the cup back to Sarah. Somewhere inside, a guard with an expensive watch is finally learning what it feels like to be on the wrong side of a door that won't open. You decide that's enough for one morning.